What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, and it's Top 10 Thursday. Last week, I counted down what I thought was the absolute best games that came out in 2016. With the good though, you always have to deal with a lot of the bad. The projects that tricked us into buying them with fancy trailers and cool teasers, and in the end, they ended up sucking. So today, we're going to be dredging up the worst of the worst on my picks for the top 10 most disappointing games of 2016. Number 10. Battleborn. Gearbox Software is a pretty big company that's grown very rich because of their hilarious shoot-and-loot series, Borderlands. This franchise was all about teaming up with friends in a bright and wonderful world to make our own interesting stories. For Battleborn, people were hoping that this new project would take that original charm and give the gameplay a smart twist. Sadly, what we got was more like playing League of Legends while stuck in a first-person view. This online arena battler may have had a lot of heroes to play as and maps to try out, but somehow managed to feel totally empty and lifeless. Each match starts out fast and fun, but by the time you and your buddies capture the last objective in a painfully long struggle, you can't help but wish that they just made Borderlands 3 instead. Number 9. Firewatch. There are few things that can frustrate me more than a bad ending. To be perfectly honest, in my opinion, Firewatch doesn't even really have a conclusion at all, it just randomly stops. After building this deep, emotional plot full of flawed but amazingly human heroes, it just suddenly shows you the credits. I don't want to spoil it, but let me paint you a picture. Say you're watching a movie that is super good. The action is intense, the actors are all very skilled, and every moment keeps you on the edge of your seat. During the final scenes though, someone just walks into the room, ejects the DVD, and smashes it right in front of you without saying anything. You're just left sitting there stunned and disappointed. That's Firewatch in a nutshell. Number 8. Street Fighter V. This series will forever be legendary in the pages of gaming history for its incredible legacy of epic fighting games. Each entry we got in the 90s redefined the genre of 2D brawlers, but somewhere along the path to greatness they lost their way. Street Fighter V was one of the rockiest launches of any project this year, mostly because they put it out when it clearly wasn't finished. The story was just a slideshow of pictures, online servers basically didn't work, and there wasn't even an arcade mode. With follow-up patches, they did eventually repair this broken mess of a game, but at that point a large chunk of the community had already moved on. This was Capcom's chance to make Street Fighter V the premier tournament title of the PlayStation 4 and PC, and yet for some reason they decided to completely blow it. Number 7. Quantum Break. I've mentioned in previous videos that one of my favorite games ever is Alan Wake. Something about its blend of creepy monsters and complex plot instantly made me fall in love with it. When I heard that the guys who made this were working on a new project, I was obviously hyped. Too bad the final product was almost more of a TV show than a normal game. Quantum Break lets us fill the role of a scientist who's dedicated his life to experimenting and unlocking the secrets of time. During an early test though, his machine explodes. Now he's left with unique powers that let him alter the pacing of the universe and essentially gives him the ability to use time as a weapon. Overall, this was a very fascinating concept, but it just seemed to lack the awesome world that made Alan Wake so perfect. Shooting hundreds of soldiers, dealing with goofy villains, and sitting through 30-minute long cutscenes left the whole experience feeling a bit lame as a whole. Number 6. Umbrella Corps. Resident Evil has certainly had its ups and downs over the last few years. For example, RE6 is absolute garbage, while Resident Evil Revelations is surprisingly decent. You just have no idea what to expect from these sequels anymore. In Umbrella Corps, they figured it was a great idea to throw away every aspect of the franchise that existed so far and instead turn it into a squad-based third-person shooter. No longer are you dealing with legions of the undead or trying to desperately navigate puzzle-filled hallways. All you need to worry about here is killing the enemy humans and earning points. Everything about this game is so stupidly bad it genuinely shocked me. The controls make it feel like you're a robot, guns are so weak they seem like toys, and worst of all, the monsters themselves aren't even scary. You can literally walk right past zombies without them even noticing you. Seriously, I want to know, what the hell were they thinking when they made this dumpster fire? Number 5. Mafia III. Glitches can happen in any game. I understand that building a giant environment by writing millions of lines of code can lead to random errors, but at least attempt to release a game that sort of functions. Mafia III was supposed to transport players to a difficult time in America's past and put us in the shoes of an unlikely hero who takes it upon himself to clean up the streets. While these goals sound cool, what this really amounted to was repeating the same 3 kinds of side missions over and over again until you fight the last boss, all while avoiding some very flawed programming. Being repetitive sucks enough on its own, but watching the game freak out when you're just trying to play it can be extremely annoying. At one point, I was simply driving down the road and the world started switching from day to night really quickly. It was like my character was given some weird drugs and his mind couldn't adjust to what was going on. While beating it, I also saw bad guys falling through the ground, bullets that seemed to hit invisible walls, and teammates that refused to walk during quests. Hopefully, before they launch their next game, they actually test it. Number 4. Mighty Number 9. Crowdfunding has led to some truly amazing projects. This train wreck, on the other hand, isn't one of them. After getting nearly $4 million on Kickstarter, the developers set to work making what they intended to be the grand spiritual sequel to Mega Man. 3 years later it arrived, and yet it had very little to do with anything involving the Blue Bomber. Beck is a tiny, powerful android built to help protect humanity, along with his 8 robo-brothers and sisters. One day a computer virus makes all these helper bots go insane, except for him. Now it's our job to use cutting-edge technology to beat our old friends, steal their abilities, and gain the strength needed to fix the land. I bet that seems rather sweet, right? Regrettably, this is held back by downright awful gameplay. Everything about this project is so stiff and boring. Dashing through stages and blasting foes should be a fast, fun time, and yet somehow its rigid style stops it from building a good sense of pacing. Often while playing this, I felt like I was running through a half-done arcade game because of how unfinished actions were. Fans were completely heartbroken by how bland Mighty Number 9 turned out to be. Maybe someday Mega Man himself will come back and we can finally forget how lame this game was. Number 3. Star Fox Zero. If you ask anyone what the best Nintendo 64 games were, chances are a huge chunk of the population would mention Star Fox 64 among the top of the list. With its brilliant level design, silly story, and colorful art, it was an awesome adventure. When rumors surfaced that we'd be getting a brand new Star Fox game on the Wii U, it was hard not to get excited. That is until we saw that they forced in some sloppy motion controls. To steer your ship, you use the joysticks on the gamepad, but aiming is handled by tilting the entire device itself to move the targeting. On paper, this is a smart choice because it could give us bold new ways to handle complicated firefights. In reality though, this just means you'll spend hours trying to rewrite your instincts so that you don't turn your plane every time you see an enemy, but instead rotate the controller like a kid pretending to drive a car. To make matters worse, the developers put a separate view on the gamepad screen to let you know where you're aiming, and there are several major areas where you're required to use this mechanic. Nothing is dumber than stopping me from watching the actual game in order to stare at my controller. If they just gave us normal controls, this could have been incredible, but they had to ruin it by making another game built around a pointless gimmick. Number 2. The Division. In 2014, Bungie released a project that they'd been working on for quite a while called Destiny. This was essentially an online-only shooter with an epic sci-fi setting for us to get lost in. It wasn't exactly something everyone loved, but it's hard to deny that it was a cool plan. Well, it seems Ubisoft learned from Bungie's mistakes and tried to make their own version of this idea. The Division sets us free in a frozen New York City after a deadly plague broke out on Black Friday. The town is empty except for a few Christmas decorations, millions of dead bodies, and a group of survivors who have formed dangerous gangs. Each of these gangs has their own ruthless style, so taking them down will require some major teamwork. You can join up with random people online or with close friends to wipe these baddies out. Here's the problem though. The core gameplay is just way too slow. On the surface, this appears to be a well-designed tactical shooter when really it's an RPG. Bullets deal damage according to off-screen dice rolls, and foes all have varying levels that give them extra defense and health. This basically turned it into Dungeons & Dragons with guns. The most agonizing part of all though was the raids. If you want better weapons, you have to battle tough bosses that can sometimes take hours to kill. Shooting a dude in the head hundreds of times over is not fun in the slightest. Number 1. No Man's Sky. Sean Murray is a person with a unique dream. He wanted to make the biggest game of all time. A title that would unleash players in a universe so large that no two players would ever have the same experience. It's an ambitious goal, but he seemed to be the man to make this vision real. In interviews, he talked about vehicles built for combat in the deepest reaches of space, of mountain ranges so gorgeous you'd want to spend the rest of your life looking at them, and thousands of tiny details on each world we explore. There was even a lot of mentions of multiplayer and how that would function with so many billions of planets we could come across. There's just one little issue. All of this was pure lies. Don't get me wrong, No Man's Sky doesn't have horrible gameplay, it just isn't at all what was promised. Shortly after launch, the bitter truth dawned on people. The team behind this project may have had some fantastic intentions, but the product we got was just a really basic game. In the final version, all we really do is float from place to place, land, collect minerals, and then use that to fuel our ship and jump to the next solar system. Every planet looks roughly the same except for minor changes to the plants and animals. Nothing ever took my breath away or left me curious to see what's over the next horizon. No Man's Sky could have been a project that forever changed the face of gaming as we know it, but instead, it'll go down in history as an overhyped catastrophe, and for that reason, I am giving it my pick as the most disappointing game of 2016. Did your favorite piece of trash not make the list? Got an idea for a future top 10? Leave it in the comments down below. I'm actually going to ask you guys to do me a huge favor this week. The views on YouTube are basically broken, so it's hard to tell how well a project is doing once I put it up. If you'll do me a giant favor and give this video a like, just so I can know if anyone's really watching it, since I can't tell just by the views. If this video gets 1,000 likes in the first week, I promise to reveal a very embarrassing secret in next week's episode of Top 10 Thursday. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. This means a lot to me. I love making these things. So, if you'll do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked this video, maybe check out my last video. Please subscribe, and if you want, share this somewhere with your friends.